Yeah. So we'll just see if we have some people coming in. I have no idea to see how. Oh, 0 viewers. So we'll give everybody. I'll give everybody a second to come online. Make sure everything's cool. So yeah. Do you guys have? So do you guys have any viewers on yours? Is it just mine that says 0?
All
I see is our bars down below, and
yeah, come on. All right, well, we're just going to go ahead and begin. I want to thank everybody for showing up as soon as you get here. My name is Sharon Biggs Waller, and I'm the author of upcoming Forbidden Orchid and A Mad Wicked Folly. And then we also have the very lovely, I'm going to put her up, Meg Medina. And she, wait, where are you, Meg?
here I am.
We got Meg, who is the author of Milagros, Girl from Away. Tia Isa Wants a Car. The Girl Who Could Silence the Wind. Yaki Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass. Mango, Albuela, and me. And the upcoming Burn, Baby Burn. So that's Meg. And then, oh, don't die, mouse. Okay, there's Jessica Spotswood, who is the author of the Cahill Witch Chronicles, A Tyranny of Petticoats, and her upcoming contemporary Wild Swans. And then Kat Winters, hi Kat,
Hi.
author of the YA novels In the Shadow of Blackbirds, The Cure for Dreaming, The Steep and Thorny Way, and the adult novels The Uninvited and the upcoming Yesternight. So what I thought we could do, before we get started on that, I wanted to do a few thanks here first. I want to thanks to our publishers for helping promote the broadcast. Our publishers are Viking. I had them all written down, and now I don't know what to do with my notes. So we have Viking. We have Candlewick, right? Candlewick. And we have Abram's Amulet. Did I say that right, guys?
Yep.
Yes, so we want to thank all of them for helping promote our broadcast, all of our publicists. I also want to thank Rachel Silverman for helping with technical issues. I'm a writer. I know how to work my my keyboard, and that's about it. I tried Scrivener out for a while, and that was too complicated for me. So Rachel is great, and I want to tell you that Rachel's also starting out a new sort of venture to become a virtual author assistant, which takes the burden out of growing an author's platform. So she helps with publicity, social media, web design, graphic design, and blogger. And she did the Google Tech for this broadcast, and she will be she's probably listening in as we speak, but I'd still be searching Google hopelessly to figure this broadcast out if it was not for Rachel. And you can find her at rachelsilbermanreads.com. Okay, so we're going to just introduce ourselves really quick here, and let's start with Kat. Since I have you up, Kat, you want to show your book and tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Here's my newest book. This is The Steep and Thorny Way, coming out this upcoming Tuesday, just like everyone else's books who are gathered here today. This one is a reimagining of Shakespeare's Hamlet, set in the backwoods of Oregon in a racially charged 1920s. And the protagonist is a 16-year-old girl named Hannah Lee Denny who's trying to figure out what happened the night her father died.
What was your inspiration for writing The Steep and Thorny Way?
It was the history. I discovered that the KKK took over Oregon in the early 1920s. I discovered we had all sorts of exclusion laws that made it extremely difficult for African Americans to settle in the state, starting with the state's constitution. And I just found all sorts of other racist and discriminatory laws, and just had a very passionate reaction to that, and wanted to form a book out of it. And everything came together when I realized that Hamlet could be the template of this novel, and that's when everything took off and the plot fell in place.
Great, thanks, Kat. Okay, Jessica, you're up. Here's
Hi.
Jessica. Hi.
I am the editor of A Tyranny of Petticoats, which also comes out on Tuesday from Candlewick. Our subtitle is 15 Stories of Belles, Bank Robbers, and Other Badass Girls. Our authors, I have 14 wonderful authors that I got the chance to work with. I'm just going to run through them real quick. J. Anderson Coates, Andrea Kramer, Y.S. Lee, Catherine Longshore, Marie Lu, Kekla Magoon, Marissa Meyer, Sandra Mitchell, Beth Revis, Caroline Tung Richmond, Lindsay Smith, me, Robin Talley, Leslie Walton, and Elizabeth Wine.
And what was sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, some of them are trying historical for the first time, and some of them are fantastic, very well received and well reviewed.
Oh, we lost Jessica. She's frozen.
Former historical authors as well. Oh.
Oh, there she is. There. Okay.
Can you hear me?
And
there she is.
yeah, we did. What was your inspiration for putting together Petticoats?
Well, I've always loved historical fiction. I grew up right outside the Gettysburg battlefield. As a child, we went picnicking and hiking on the battlefield. And my dad is a huge Civil War buff, but all the books in his study they were big tomes on battles, they were westerns, they were books, biographies of statesmen and politicians and generals, and I just didn't see myself reflected in any of them. They were all about men. And so I'm really fascinated by historical fiction and historical fantasy that centers on women and girls. And when I decided to put together an anthology, there was never any other theme in mind for me. I really wanted it to be about sort of reclaiming history for girls and women, and showing especially women who have been overlooked so often, women of color and women who identify as queer and disabled women. So that was really important to me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jessica. So Meg went back to the disco era, and I remember the disco era, Meg.
It's seared onto your imagination.
I remember doing the bus stop and all of that stuff and the hustle. And okay, so you want to show your book and tell us?
So here it is. Probably my favorite cover so far on my books. It's Burn Baby Burn. And I fought against this cover, which is kind of interesting, but I do love this whole sort of bomb image. So as you said, we go back to 1977 to New York City. And that was sort of a humbling thing to realize that's now historical fiction. And unlike my very esteemed colleagues here tonight, I did not think of myself as a writer of historical fiction. So this was a real journey for me. Hello, Katie. So the Pat is adorable. But,
see what's in my basement right now. And baby goats in my basement. That later. Sorry.
So anyway, I came to this story because I actually lived in New York City in 1977, and anyone who survived that year, I think you couldn't possibly forget it. The city was broke. Race relations were at their worst. There were arsons everywhere. Crime was high. And certainly the thing that most people associate with that year was that we had a serial killer who was killing young couples in their cars. His name was Son of Sam. So that became the backdrop, and a look at violence in a city, and ultimately violence and how that plays out inside a family and inside a girl's life.
Great. Okay, thanks. So I'll do mine. Okay, here we go. Forbidden Orchid. And the inspiration is just the story of a teen in the Victorian era named Elodie, who is one of many, many sisters, and her father is a plant hunter, and she has a wanderlust. She wants to go with him, but she can't because she's a girl, until fate forces her hand, and she must go with him to find an orchid that's worth loads and loads of money to save her family from the workhouse. And I love the cover, too, and there's even a map inside. This is my second Viking book that has a map inside. Yay, maps. Gotta love them. So my inspiration for writing Orchid was I lived in England for a while. My husband's British, and gardening is like a national pastime there. And the gardens are so beautiful. And I was going to a gardening museum, in Lambeth, and they had this was like I think 2003 or 4 or something, and they had an exhibit of plant hunters. and it was talking about that was the most dangerous job there was, and these people were, captured, they were killed, they died of malaria, they killed each other. There was this huge, it was just a whole thing, and so they could rise and fall based on what they collected. So people who didn't have a lot of money could make a lot of money by collecting a rare plant. And I thought, what would it be like if a girl did that? And so it kind of sat in the back of my mind for a while until my agent and I were talking about what would be next after Folly. And I said, well, let's think about plant hunting. And he kind of went, what? And I said, well, think of it as Indiana Jones in a corset. so that was the inspiration behind working. So, okay, so we've got all of our books, guys, and we've got some viewers, and we had some questions come in in advance, and let's talk about those. And anybody joining us can ask questions. So let's start with the first one. And Amy Lim brought in our first question, and she was asking about forgotten women, lesser-known badass women in history. And I want to first say too that March is Women's History Month. And Women's History Month began in the 80s, and it's every March. And so if you want to learn more about Women's History Month, go to the Library of Congress website, and that's womenshistorymonth.gov. And it'll tell you all about Women's History Month and some really great forgotten voices of history. So Amy suggested, so her question is to all of us, favorite lesser-known badass women in history who need more love. And she said, Xing Shi for the win. And so I'm going to go with Amy's suggestion of Xing Shi. I had not heard of her, and so I looked her up, and Amy Poehler's Smart Girls website has a wonderful thing about Xing Shi. And she was a pirate. She was a 22-year-old Chinese woman, and she was born into poverty in Canton in the 1700s, and she ended up leading the notorious Red Flag Fleet. And when her husband died, she took over the pirate throne and took over the entire enterprise herself. So I think I have that right. I may have a couple details wrong, but I think that's pretty cool, like a female pirate in China. So, I mean, that's really neato. So, Kat, who would be your forgotten, or somebody who needs more love through time?
I would say it's somebody that I learned about through writing The Steep and Thorny Way. My protagonist wants to be a lawyer. She's a biracial girl in the 1920s. Her father was black, her mother's white, and I wanted to see if there were any role models that she would have looked up to, other female lawyers of color. And I discovered Charlotte E. Ray, who in 1872 became the first female African-American lawyer. I've got my notes here, that's what I'm looking down. And she was the first woman of any color to be admitted to the District of Columbia bar, and that, like I said, that was way back in 1872. So that gives my character great hope of the 20s that maybe she has a chance. Unfortunately, Charlotte E. Ray was only allowed to could only practice law for a few years because of the prejudice against both women and people of color in the 1870s. But then she went on to become a teacher and a suffragist, and I'm a big fan of anyone who was a suffragist. So she,
yeah, we love them.
so she goes way up on my favorite lesser-known badass women in history.
Yeah, that's so great. Christabel Pankhurst too. She couldn't be a lawyer either, even though she studied for the bar back in the 1900s or late 1800s. All right, Jessica, you're up.
I'm going to cheat a little with my answer.
Okay.
I really, I just discovered in the last few weeks this amazing Twitter series that fellow YA author Mackenzie Lee does, and she calls it Badass Ladies of History You Should Know. And so I think right now every week she's doing a chat where she explains a new badass lady of history. The most recent one was a Mongolian warrior princess who basically requested that everyone who wanted to marry her had to wrestle her, and only if they won wrestling her did they get to be her husband. And so she apparently ended up with a lot of, and if they lost, they had to give her 100 horses. And so she ended up with a lot of horses and no husband and became the general of her father's army.
That could work.
So for more on incredible women like that, you should follow Mackenzie Lee's Twitter because she has an amazing series going on.
Will you tweet that out later?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks.
I admire people who really know how to do like these things on social media and are so organized about it. I wish I could be that organized to like do something like consistently, but you know. All right, so Meg, you are up.
Yeah. So what I think, there are so many women in history whose amazing contributions, right, have just not been celebrated properly. But one of my favorites of recent years, Margarita Engel brought to light actually in a book called The Lightning Dreamer. And it's, listen to this name, it's the longest name in the world, Gertrudis Gomez de Avellaneda. She went by Tula, which is much better. And she lived in the 1800s in Cuba, and she wrote the first abolitionist novel in Cuba, which was an outrage at the time. And she was a feminist and an abolitionist at a time and in a place where that was strictly, forbidden. And I love people like that, women who can stand up in their time and just defy it in the way that Tula did. So, if you haven't read The Lightning Dreamer by Margarita Engel, and if she's out there on this Google chat watching, hi Margarita, I love that novel in verse. It's a good place to get information on her.
I'm going to have to read that. I have a huge TBR pile, and I love it. I'm glad that it's just so nice to know your book larder is full. You've got all these lovely books that you can read. Okay, so everybody answered that one. So our next one is from Jackie, who asked, do you ever base your characters off people you know in real life? So let's do with Meg, since we have Meg up already.
Oh, thrown under the bus right away. Okay, so here's the thing. I am a very dangerous person to be related to, right? Because, you're going to end up in a book. So I Frankenstein them, though. I'll take, people's worst quality and I'll add it to somebody else's great quality. And I just disguise them that way. What I try to do is really decide what the truth is about this important character that I've known. And then I doctor them up sufficiently, I hope. So that I think for two reasons. So that I can have some distance from the character, so that I can actually make that character do what he or she needs to do in the novel, but also, obviously, because I don't write memoir, and because it isn't really fair to drag everybody you know through the ringer. But, I base a lot of characters off of people in real life, all the time. Certainly in Burn, Baby, Burn.
Who is it that said that all writers are like pirates? I can't remember. I don't know if it was... oh gosh, I can't remember. My brain doesn't work when I'm doing stuff like this either. So I remember hearing that, we're all thieves and pirates, and that we're constantly listening at doors and hearing people's stories and so. Okay, let's go to Jessica. Jessica, are you a thief and a pirate?
Yes.
Stories.
My husband and I are both writers, and sometimes we're terrible eavesdroppers. And we do coffee shop writing dates, and I feel like sometimes we just both go completely silent because we're really eavesdropping on the people next to us. Mm-hmm. Whether we're out to dinner or at the coffee shop, it's a little terrible, but fun. We overhear some fascinating things. So I do feel like I'm not writing about one particular person. I'm not transposing a person in real life, all of their qualities right into a person in fiction, but I do steal little bits and pieces, I think, and create a composite character sometimes, who might have a flaw from this person and something I love about this person, a mannerism from yet another person. I don't know, I think we're always, to be a writer is to be a people watcher and an eavesdropper and, a little bit of a thief.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's go to Kat. Okay.
All right, well, I'm just going to put it out on the record that I do not base my characters on my family members like they often fear they do.
Sure.
I know I've had some pretty awful father characters, and I once got a stern talking to from my mother saying, why are you writing these fathers? And it's far more interesting because my father's so nice, and that's boring to write about. So, yeah, no one's directly based on family members. I would say there's sometimes relationships that kind of work their way in the Steep and Thorny Way. I have a mother-daughter relationship, so I tapped in a lot of my emotions with my own daughter. My daughter's 16, my main character's 16, so I could definitely see where the mom was coming from at times, even though she's totally different from me. And then I'm working on a sister novel right now, and actually my adult novel, Yesternight, has a lot of sister relationships, but my next YA novel will be about two sisters, and I'm very close to my sister, so there's going to be some things that are sort of based on us, but they're their own characters, but I would say that their bond and some of the things they go through are based on my own experiences.
Okay. Well, okay, so now I'm in the hot seat. Let's see. Well, it's hard to make an original beat. You know what I mean? It's hard. And so you're like, he frowned, and, he nodded, or stuff like that. And so it's hard to get original. And so what I'll do is I'll go out in the real world and I'll watch people, and I'll see kind of the way they move and maybe like a particular thing that they do, how they put their headphones on. Not like I write a lot of contemporary, but, how maybe they gesture. And so I'll look at that. Like one time I saw a boy was asking for directions in England, and his glasses were all steamed over. He was like a backpacker. And the woman he was talking to took his glasses off, pulled her hanky out, wiped his glasses, and put them back on the guy. And I thought, oh, that's the best thing ever. I'm going to use that. So, in that case, I don't. That's about as far as I get, probably because I write historical fiction. But, I don't really base them on real people unless they're real people, in time. Like, of course, Christabel, the Pankhurst star in my first novel. There's a few people in Orchid that are real, but nobody that I completely know for sure. But I think it would be I think maybe I would agree with all of you guys, is that I do kind of all of you exactly the same thing, but nobody completely. Not yet. So. Okay, so next question is Sophie. Which historical figure from your home state or home country do you admire the most? And so since I'm up, I'll answer that one. It's a toss-up between Priscilla Mullins and Abigail Adams. I really admire Priscilla Mullins Alden, I guess would be her real name, who came over on the Mayflower when she was a teenager, and her entire family died. So she was basically all alone in this new land. And I've heard, tried to look up the facts today, but she has because she had 10 or 11 children, she had many descendants. And one of her children narrowly escaped the Salem witch trials. He escaped, but he was actually accused of witchcraft. I think it was the Salem witch trials, but it was a witch trials if it wasn't the Salem witch trials. And the other one is Abigail Adams, who told her husband, don't forget the ladies, because we will rise up in revolution if you do not don't treat us with respect and give us the rights that we deserve. So she's pretty cool. Okay, Meg, I'm going to stick you up in the hot seat now.
Yeah, so Virginia is just chock full of exciting women. So my two favorites, the first is Maggie Walker, who was the first woman banker and also the first African-American woman banker. And it's remarkable because she was born, I think, in the mid-1800s and died in 1934. So for her to reach that level of success in Virginia, the former capital of the Confederacy, is really saying something about her grit, her intellect, and her ability to just shine and manage. So I'm really always awed by the story of Maggie Walker. The other one is actually a young woman named Barbara Johns, who was a student, a 16-year-old who attended Moton High School here in Southwest Virginia, and she led a student revolt at her high school. It was a blacks-only high school, refusing in protest of the conditions at that high school. And her case eventually became part of Brown versus Board of Education. For a 16-year-old girl to organize everybody in her school and stand up in the face of racism that way seems to me amazing as well. So it's a tie between those two.
Yeah, there's a lot to choose. There's way more than you think. And I didn't even really go in my own state. It was just those two that I'd always admired it. And boy, it's just scratching the surface. You can pick so many. Okay, Miss Jessica, who do you admire?
I did a little research, and it turns out that Louisa May Alcott, who is one of my favorite authors from childhood, while we associate her mostly with Massachusetts, she was actually born in Pennsylvania. So I just find her really fascinating. Little Women was one of my favorite books. I think it was my first real favorite book in like 2nd or 3rd grade. I'm the oldest of 3 sisters, and she was one of 4 sisters, as related somewhat autobiographically in Little Women and the books that follow it. But she was also a Civil War nurse and an abolitionist. Her home in Massachusetts was a stop on the Underground Railroad for a time while she was growing up. And she supported her family with her writing from a young age, and I just find her really, really cool.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we've got Kat. Let me get you, Kat. Kat.
I'm going to go outside my home state, too. I live in Oregon, although I will give a quick shout-out. We are the state that has Beverly Cleary. She's still alive. She's about to turn 100, I believe. So I don't know if we can call her historical, but just want to say, yay, Oregon. We've got Beverly Cleary, a bunch of other amazing women, too. But one of my all-time favorite historical women is somebody I discovered as a kid through a book series that I had, and that's Nellie Bly, who's actual name was Elizabeth Cochran. She was a pioneering female investigative journalist in the 1880s, and I actually kind of used her as inspiration for my character of Olivia in The Cure for Dreaming, because when Nellie Bly was 18 years old, she read a highly sexist editorial in her local newspaper I think she was in Pittsburgh, mm-hmm. And she wrote a letter to the editor explaining why this guy was completely wrong about his sexist comments, and she ended up getting hired by the Pittsburgh Dispatch, which is the paper that she wrote into. So I use that actually as an inspirational moment for The Cure for Dreaming. My main character does something very similar, and she also traveled. She tried to beat the Jules Verne's fictional Around the World in 80 Days. She traveled around the world. I wish I'd written down how many days she actually did it in. I think it was 70-something days. She she brought attention to the abuses occurring in asylums. She went undercover and got herself, why am I thinking? The word is admitted, thank you. I couldn't think of that easy word. Admitted to an asylum and ended up getting herself out. But there's a great account that she herself has written, that she wrote in the 1880s about her experience, and that really made her career take off. So I've always just been a great admirer of her.
There's a biography that came out that I got a couple of years ago about her, which is really great. I think it was like Around the World in 100 Days, or I can't remember what it was called, but it's really good.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's just so great. Okay, so we have Deanna. And she says, what do you love most about being an author? And Kat, you're up, so I'm going to have you begin. What do you love most about being an author?
I would just say it's the fact that I can just sit and use my imagination for a living. I've been writing all my life for as long as I can remember, and I'm still stunned to this day that I'm allowed to do this as my job. It took me close to 2 decades to actually become a published author, and I just every time I can sit down and work, and the fact that people are letting me tell these stories that are sometimes a little bit odd and quirky and out there, I'm just so grateful to have this opportunity to do that. And of course, meeting fans is wonderful too, especially teen readers. I love meeting teen readers. They're amazing.
How do you turn out so many books? Because since I've known you, I've only known you two years, I think.
I think so.
And you have, how many books do you have out now? This
is the Steep Thorny Way is my fourth. It's my third YA novel, and then Yesternight, my next adult novel, will be the fifth. That's coming out in October. And I've got
and you have children, too.
What's that?
You have children as well.
I have two children, yep, a 16-year-old and a 11-year-old. I'm not quite sure how I'm doing it. There are some crazy times where I'm pulling my hair out and wondering, what have I done?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to make the most of it, trying to not freak out by the deadlines, and just if the work gets done. Like I said, I do love writing, so thankfully I'm doing what I've always loved.
They say that you should eat an elephant one bite at a time, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go with Jessica next. Oops, no, that's me. Jessica, what do you love the most about being an author?
Oh my gosh. Well, like Kat said, it's kind of the only thing I've ever really wanted to do. It's always been, since I was a little girl, something I really loved writing. But growing up, I didn't even, I don't know, I lived in this tiny one-stoplight town in Pennsylvania, and we didn't have author visits to our school. You know, I didn't know anyone growing up who was a real author. And so it's just kind of still amazing to me and such a dream come true. And I think one of my favorite parts is just going into a bookstore or a library. I work at a library now part-time, and seeing my book on the shelves, it just like never gets old. You know, people send pictures sometimes close to new book releases or just friends when they're out and about. And it's so amazing to see your book in, you know, on the shelf in the spot that you kind of always dreamed it might be. So, or for a long time, you know, I didn't even really have the temerity to dream of that. So that's still very cool. And like Kat said, I love meeting readers. I was at the Northern Virginia Teen Book Fest yesterday, and you know, Tyranny doesn't go on sale technically until Tuesday, but we had early copies.
Oh, with Jessica.
It was so cool to see actual teenage. Amazing.
Yeah, that's so great. Okay, and you have a lot of books as well. You guys, you are very, you have so many, and you have a series. So are you still stuck? Oh, she's stuck. Okay, I'm going to come back to Jessica when she unsticks. So let's go to Meg.
My greatest fear is getting stuck with some really weirdo face for all the world to see. So I'm sorry if it happens. So what do I love the most about being an author? So just as Kat said, the piece of staying in connection with your imagination is a really sustaining thing. It's a very joyful experience. It's wonderful. But there's this other piece, because I write specifically for young people, right? And the other piece, in addition to what I get out of like the imagination piece, I also like the idea that what I'm doing sort of helps answer questions that I had like growing up, like making sense of my life. Sometimes when I put it down in the character, I'm turning ideas around. I'm asking myself questions that I had then, some that I still have, about the nature of being a girl, a woman, growing up, unfairness, all of those kinds of things. And it feels amazing to me when I see examples or have experiences where something I have written has helped or has given young people a way to talk about something difficult or to unravel something or to consider a thorny problem. Like that piece of deepening my own sort of experience living and deepening kids' experience as they think about things and interact with books and reading and with each other, that seems really cool to me.
Now you write across a lot of genres. You have picture books, correct?
Yeah, I have picture books, middle grade and YA, and I love to write for all ages. It just sort of depends on the needs of the story, right? And also on my own emotional needs as I'm coming to the project. Because sometimes I really feel 7 and joyful and innocent and happy, and other times I really want to just clean somebody's clock, and then I write the YA novel.
I love that. That's so great. Okay, so I'll put myself back in the seat. what do I love best about being a writer? I love creating worlds where there were none. So I love to create, these experiences. And again, it's the same as everybody else has said. It's like letting my imagination go. When I was little, I was very shy. I didn't know how to be in the world. I was almost embarrassed to have to just be in the world, and I didn't know who to be. I didn't know what personality to have, and so whenever I opened a book, it was such a relief to me. I could read about, like you just said, Beverly Cleary, like how Ramona and Beezus were, as sisters. What that was like, I really could, even though I love Ramona, Beezus, I was like an older sister, and I could understand why she was so exasperated. I don't know if I'd be sitting here right now if it weren't for Judy Blume. And so to be in that sort of arc of young women, their own belief, their own thoughts, and that they would pick up a book and maybe see themselves in the book, and the same thing that you said, Meg, and help them sort of navigate through life. And it's really interesting. I like to reread books that I read when I was young. And you read books when you're young differently than you read them when you're, you're in your jaded 30s and 40s and 50s and however old.
Keep going.
Yeah. I'm going to be 50 next year, so. So I recently read this book called Lori, and I was whisked back to that time when I was 16. And Lori is about a girl that goes to a kibbutz, and she learns all the various in the 60s and learns about all the people that lived there. And that is the book that taught me what peace really was like. The first book I ever cried at was Island of the Blue Dolphins. That was the first time I had ever cried for someone other than myself. And I was shocked at the way I reacted to it because I had never felt for someone else. And books have such an amazing way to bring about, to help you teach how to be human. And that's what I love. I love being part of that process. Okay. We're really rolling through them here, guys. Now, anybody who's listening, our viewers, you can ask a question, so don't be shy. We will try to get to all of those. Deanna asked another question, which is, which character was the hardest to write? Okay, since I'm up, I'll answer that question. The hardest character to write, it's weird because some characters go, yeah, here I am, write me, and other questions are just like, I don't know what to tell you. And you have to really think about those characters and sort of, almost interview them. I don't know if you guys do that too, where you kind of just say, okay, tell me who you are. I would say that Elodie's father was the hardest for me to write because he suffers post-traumatic stress from being something terrible that happened to him, and I had never experienced anything like that before. And I wanted to be him to be a sympathetic character, and I wanted to make sure that I handled that very carefully. So, I did a lot of research into people who have been tortured and how they live their life afterward. So he was very hard for me because I couldn't really jump into his shoes like I could with the sisters, and villains are easy to write about because they're just fun to write about. So I would say Elodie's dad was the hardest one for me to write about. But also with the hardest characters, I feel like I learn the most because they're difficult to write. So let's go with Meg next.
A couple of ways. On the one hand, Hector was difficult because he was so dislikable. It was really hard for me to develop sort of compassion for him and write him. But actually, the character that was the hardest for me to write in my novel was also my favorite character in the novel, which is Stiller. And the reason I say she was difficult to write is that although, I knew intimately Stiller's neighborhood, her neighbors, her age, the time, all of that, I was writing outside of my culture, right, and my race. And a lot of the novel, Burn Baby Burn, has to do with feminism. It has to do. She's a tenants' right activist, so it has a lot to do with social justice issues and so on. And I really wanted to make sure I got her right. Mm-hmm. And so that required a lot of research. It required me to talk with, vet the book with friends who are authors themselves and women of color and so on, and pass it by them and see, get their take and get some some insight. So, I wrote her, I just paid extremely close attention because I wanted so much to get her right.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. Okay, so we've got Jessica. Are you back with us, Jessica? Yay.
Did she come back?
Are you frozen again?
Hi.
Oh, there you are.
Yay.
Okay, so the question was, which character was hardest to write for you? But you do an anthology right now, so let's go. I don't know. Pick any character that you want from all across your many books.
Oh, well, actually, in my own short story for Tyranny, I have a small part. Is Marie Laveau has a small role in the story. And my main character is a free woman of color in New Orleans in 1826, and she's trying to choose between the very respectable middle-class man of color who has been a family friend the whole time she's been growing up and who is offering her marriage, and a wealthy white planter who can offer her, riches and a lot of romance, but not respectability. And she has her family on one side and her friend on the other side, and she goes to Marie Laveau to ask advice. And that was really fascinating because I read quite a bit about Marie Laveau, but so little is known for sure. She's known as this legendary voodoo queen, but so much of what we know about her is contradicted by other sources, and very little of it is certain. So I had to kind of go with what I was hearing from multiple sources, but may or may not actually be factual because it's so hard to know.
That's one of the hardest things with writing historical fiction is that you're like, okay, yeah, I got this, and then you read another thing, or you speak to somebody else, and it's like, ooh, maybe I don't got this. So, yeah, that's a tough one. Those can be hard. Okay, Kat, you're up, lady.
Okay, I had a pretty easy time. Well, I don't want to say easy, but my teen characters I felt flowed really easily. They came to me quickly, including my protagonist, Hanley. Probably the one I had the most difficult was a sheriff character that I have in the novel. This, like I said, the book takes place in the 20s in a small town in the backwoods of Oregon, and there's a sheriff in charge. And I didn't want him to be just a stereotypical tough small town sheriff in the 20s. So I had a hard time figuring him out. I even changed his name. And what finally helped me portray him and give him kind of a character is, and I'm going to go back a little bit to one of our previous questions, is do you steal personalities or traits from real-life people? In this case, I actually did, and I won't even say who it is, but there was a person who had a particular type of voice, and as soon as I gave this character that voice, everything fell into place. I knew what he looked like, I knew how tall he was, I knew his backstory, and he became much easier to, that's when his new name appeared, and I realized what other people, my protagonist's attitude would be toward him, and how she spoke of him to her friends. So that was kind of my breakthrough moment for him, because I think the things I have, the characters I have the toughest time with are more the tougher, kind of more villainous characters, trying to make sure they're not two-dimensional, making sure they're rounded characters as well as my main characters.
Okay, cool. All right, so you stay there, Kat. Sophie asked if you could be the next-door neighbor to a historical figure, who would it be?
You said I'm going next?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would say I would like somebody on the witty side, because I find with my own neighbors, small talk is sometimes a problem when I'm just going out to get the mail or something like that. So somebody like Oscar Wilde or Mae West, or Dorothy Parker, somebody along those lines, somebody who would have a good zinger, and I wouldn't even necessarily have to say anything at all. I could give them like a thumbs up, give them a wave, and that would be it. For the sake of small talk with neighbors, I'm going with the witty the witty historical figures.
I love that. Okay, Jessica. Who would you live next door to, a literary figure or writer?
Nellie Bly was going to be my answer, and Kat stole that earlier.
Take it. Take her. You can have her. Have her. I'll enter.
No, I haven't. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about Bessie Coleman recently, mostly through Elizabeth Wine's story in Tyranny, The Color of the Sky. And she is such an amazing woman, Bessie Coleman. She was a famous black aviatrix, and she went to France to get her pilot's license because no one would give it to her in the U.S. because she was both black and a woman. And so she went to France, and she learned how to fly and got her international pilot's license and came back to the United States, and she was trying to start a flying school when she was tragically killed in a flying accident. And Elizabeth's story is actually about a young girl, and Bessie is her idol, and she witnesses her flying and meets her on the day of her death. So
Oh, wow.
I think she would be a really cool neighbor, and maybe she would take me flying.
Yeah. Okay, Meg.
Oh, I don't have a great answer, but I really like to laugh, so I think I would put Mark Twain next door to me, just for the laughs. It's there are some things you want from your neighbors, and one of the things I really enjoy is when I have neighbors that just make life more pleasant. So I'll throw him in there. Mark Twain.
Okay, I would choose Sylvia Pankhurst because she's an artist, and she was a suffragist. And I live next door to some wonderful artists. It's kind of odd in my area. There's tons of artists around here, and so my friend lives 2 doors down. I live on a farm, and so there's only 10 people here, and several of them are artists. So, my dad's one, so he lives up the right way. And so I like to go down there and talk to her about art, and I like talking to people who are different, who have different art forms. We're all sort of in the creative field, and I like to talk to her about how she does things and how she gets over that feeling of you're not good enough or whatever, like we get when we're artists. And so Sylvia Pankhurst would be really cool because I could talk to her about girls' issues, and I could talk to her about art. So that's why I would pick her. Okay, so that was a really great question. And now we have Wilhelmina. Oh, I love your name. Wilhelmina Von Drake. Is that the best name ever? So Wilhelmina asks, what is the most difficult thing about writing historical fiction? Since I'm up, I'll answer that. The hardest thing about writing historical fiction is organizing my notes. It's really hard. It's really hard to keep all my notes organized. I have tons of books. I don't know if you can see how many books I have, and I do interviews with people, and I go, when I can, I travel to places that I write about, and so I'll have little pieces of paper kind of crammed in everywhere. For instance, I can show you. This is my notebook for Orchid, and it's just I try to organize it by putting these little stickies on, and it's hard. So it takes me. I've asked other historical writers, how do you keep your stuff organized? How do you keep your research organized? And the more I try to organize it, the worse it gets. So I just highlight things, and I buy all the books I possibly can buy. Even if I've interviewed the person that wrote the book, or I've gone to the place, I buy the book so that I can sort of highlight it and then come back later on. But that's the hardest thing. Even though I love research, it's still difficult. So let's do Meg.
I think that for me, the hardest thing was figuring out how to make the research show now like it is stuck on. So the book always has to be about the girl. It has to be about, that's the story that your reader's following. The history is shaping her, is defining her, is doing all kinds of things, but it has to be about the girl. So when I was writing Burn Baby Burn, for example, I mean, I was working against the history that was so churning and full of events that could easily take over the novel. I mean, a serial killer is something that grabs your attention. So I found that the hardest part. The research was hard in organizing it, but then once you had to fold it back in and still make it feel natural to the girl, but let her story shine, that's where the trouble came in.
Did one of you guys say this? And I was thinking just a few before we started about these questions. I can't remember if it was one of you guys that said it, because I don't want to steal it, or somebody else. That when you're writing historical fiction, you're writing two books. You sort of are writing the history, and then you're writing the fiction, and then you're mixing them together. So it's like a swirled, sort of pound cake. So the two are together make this lovely combination, but you're almost writing these two stories. So yeah, but you don't want the history. The character is the thing for sure. Yeah. Okay. So we've got Jessica. Hardest thing.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with Marie Laveau. It's so hard to know whether or not you're getting it right. Especially, I think the farther back you go in history, it can be harder to find primary sources, especially if the character you're working with might not have been well educated, or might be someone who wouldn't be able to write down her story. And a lot of the primary sources that I was able to find for that period, for instance, were kind of problematic because they were white men, basically, writing about encountering free women of color on their travels in New Orleans, and it was, a lot of the things they wrote and the way they wrote it was problematic. So for me, I think for me that's hard. I really want to get it right, and it can be hard to know what that is, what the truth of daily life was like for people.
Yeah, it's hard because you can't travel back in time, unfortunately. We do the best we can to get historical fiction right, but
hey Sharon, I don't is the sound getting low for anybody?
Is the sound getting low?
Wonky, like
It's getting strange.
Echoing.
It's a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Thanks.
How about, okay, is that better? Let's see. I don't know how much
I think others are the ones who are reverberating.
Okay. All right, Kat, you go ahead.
Okay. I would say that. Oh yeah, I hear myself echoing. What do you guys do with your microphones?
Stupid technology.
All right, I'll try to answer despite the echoes. I would say just the anachronisms, which I just is pretty much talking about a similar type of things with the story, but I would say even down to each sentence. I feel like with writing historical fiction, every sentence you have to kind of look and say, was this word in use? Looking at like slang or just idioms. I'm frequently going to my slang dictionaries or doing searches on Google Books for my time period to make sure that the phrases were actually used. Oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, stop that doing so. I wasn't sure if you could hear me. I'm not good at it. So, reading out all the anachronisms on a page-by-page basis, I feel is the most challenging part of historical fiction.
Yeah, because it's difficult, even though I think it's important for readers to understand that we're edited, that we go through the editorial process and the copy editing process and the proofreading process, and there's so many eyes on the book before it hits the shelves that even things do still slip through. It's just one of those things. In every book there's going to be something. There really is, and if we try to make it perfect, that's the path to crazy, to make it exactly 100% perfect. That is difficult to do. So I love all of your guys, and I agree with every single one. Okay, you ready for the next one? This is a fun one. We've got Nori, who has the cutest poodle on her avatar ever. And she says, is there a certain song that you listen to on repeat when writing your books? And Kat, you are up. So,
For each book I feel kind of has a theme song. For the Steep Thorny Way, it was "Where Do You Sleep Last Night," which is Nirvana made that one famous in an MTV Unplugged edition in the '90s. I listened to that one. There's also an older Lead Belly version that actually inspired Nirvana. I listened to that as well, and that would put me in the right mindset, and it just make me feel like I was in my book setting in the woodsy. There's even a song sleeping in the pines, like this in the night in the woods one night in the pines. So that it would put me straight into my setting every time I listen to it.
oh, so cool. Okay, Jessica. Oops, wait, Jessica.
Hi. I didn't really listen to anything while I was working on the short story for the anthology, but for my contemporary book, I listened to a lot of churches. And for the one that I'm listening to now, for the book that I'm working on now, which is also contemporary, I've been listening to a lot of Decca and a lot of.
I didn't get that. Did you guys get that? Was it Def Punk you said? No, who'd you say?
Decca. She's an artist.
Oh, okay, okay. Sorry, you just broke up. And you're frozen. No, you're not frozen. You're back. You're back. Okay. Cool. Okay, so we're going to go to Meg. Oh, Meg, you obviously had to listen to some disco.
I listen to disco, and I listen to a lot of disco. And I would say the song that I listen to the most is Give Up the Funk by Parliament. So I'm going to ask everybody to just look that up. I have on my website sort of a stream of the songs that I was listening to as I wrote it, and the novel is filled with references to the song.
Oh,
iTunes wouldn't let me share it for copyright reasons, the actual clips, but the titles are all there. So enjoy.
It's so great. Okay, so let me put me up. Yeah, I listened to Alex, the main boy character, the love interest in my story, is sort of a tragic figure who's an orphan. And there's this British singer called Rue Paynes, who's just, he's amazing. I love his voice. He's got the most beautiful voice. And he sings a song called Know Me Well. And whenever I would write Elodie and Alex together, or things where I had to go into an emotional place for Alex, I would listen to that song, and it's just so beautiful. It's just a gorgeous song. And then for Elodie, I love the Waylon Jennings, and so there's a song called You Are Here, and I loved it just for hearing it. And then I looked at the words, and it's funny, when you love a song, you think that kind of describes my character. It just has the feel of your character, and it was. And then I read the lyrics, and it just was crazy. It was like, this one thing, every sign of love, every seed that's growing, every sweet surrender to that silent knowing will bring you to your knees and closer to the reason, and there's no turning back, know you are here. And it was just so amazing because that's sort of where my character was. There wasn't any turning back. So for some reason, I subconsciously loved that song, and then when I was done with the book, I read the lyrics. So you gotta have some music when you're writing. It's great. Okay, so let's see. We are going to go to Aracel Esperanza. Meg, help me out.
Aracel Esperanza.
Okay. What craft, book, or action did you do to continue to be inspired? That is such a great question. Okay, so since I'm up, I'll answer it. The craft, book, or action. Well, I raise orchids, and so that kind of inspired me. I love my orchids. An action that I do to continue to be inspired. I would say I try to go to the places where I write about when I can afford that. I went to England in July, and I went to Downhouse, where Charles Darwin lived, and I walked on his thinking path, the quarter-mile thinking path that he has, and that was so inspirational, you guys. I picked up a rock and I took it home, and I carry it in my pocket sometimes. And just being where he made all these experiments with his orchids, and then I also went on the tea clipper, the Cutty Sark. So doing those things it inspires me a lot, just sort of being in history and going to like old places. So let's go with Meg.
Oh, we're right at time, so I'm going to say it quick. I think it's important to cross-pollinate. So I think when I go see performances, see poetry, I'll try to sort of be in connection with other ways of getting into my imagination.
Mm-hmm. So you said I kind of lost you there because you were moving your microphone thingy?
Oh, sorry. Cross-pollinating. So seeing other art forms.
Yes.
Dance, writing poetry, just other ways in and out of imagination.
I love that. That's great. Okay, Jessica.
One of my favorite sources of inspiration is a Tumblr called OMG That Dress. And I really love it. It has this amazing amount of historical clothing, from shoes to accessories to dresses, and I find it really helpful because I don't always know the right terms for addressing what material it is or what the style is, and the Tumblr will link to the historical, the record. A lot of times the clothing that they're highlighting is in some kind of museum collection. And so they'll link to the record about it, and I can read, how to describe the material, how to describe all sorts of things. And so I find that really helpful, and I tend to pin the dresses that are appropriate to my Pinterest board, and I have a Pinterest board for most of my projects.
Cool. Okay. Now we have Kat. Oh, sorry, no, that's me. Kat.
For the Steep Thorny Way, I said it, like I said, in the woods in Oregon, and that's where I live. Well, not like in a cabin or anything. I live in the suburbs, but it's surrounded by woods. There's a creek right around the corner from my house, like two-minute walk from my house. So I did a lot of Oregon woods walks, which is what I do anyway, but it's a real place. In fact, I've been wanting to set a book in the local woods before I even came up with the idea for this particular book. So I did a lot of walk through woods that had information about the specific trees. We have a lot of moss that grows on our trees here in Oregon, even though we're not in the south. It kind of has a southern Gothic look almost to it in certain areas, just because we get so much rain up here. And the woods just kind of became a whenever I felt like I wanted inspiration for that aspect, just head out and take a walk.
That's great. Okay, so we've got a question. We're going to do one more question from the audience, and then so we're starting to get close to our time here, and then we'll do our quick fire questions, and then we will wrap it up. So Hannah Van Borg asked, how do you decide on names for your characters? That's a great question. All right, Kat.
Well, first of all, I'll say hi to Hannah because she's a local. I know Hannah. She comes to my signing, and my main character's name is Hannah Lee, which is close to Hannah. And actually, my main character's name was originally Hannah. I wanted a name that sounded like Hamlet. She's my Hamlet character, and I wanted a female version of a Hamlet sort of name. But Hannah, for some reason, in my head was just kind of too short for the character. It seemed like it wanted to be a longer name. Somehow, just Hannah Lee popped into my head, and that's felt like the right name for her. And many of, actually, pretty much all the other characters in the Steep Thorny Way are related to, they're inspired by actual Hamlet characters. So their names were drawn from the Hamlet cast. The King Claudius in Hamlet is Hamlet's stepfather. In the Steep Thorny Way, it's the stepfather's name is Clyde Coney. Coney means Dutch. Coney means king in Dutch, and the character's of descent. So his name is kind of a play on King Claudius. And the mother's name is Greta, and it's Gertrude. So it was fairly easy to pick names for this particular book, just because I had the play to base them on.
Yeah. Okay, Jessica.
I tend to use the Social Security database. If you go to the Social Security website, you can find a list of names, the most popular names from any decade, and I use that a lot with my anthology story, and then again with, or previously really, with K-Ho Witches Chronicles. You can look up the 100 most popular names, or the 500 most popular names, so you're not using all the very most popular ones. But
okay, cool.
I found here.
All right, so Meg.
Oh, all ways. Sometimes I look up baby name books. Other times the person's name just sort of appears. It's hard. I can't really describe how that is, but they just, the name feels right for that set of characteristics and so on. So it's not really it changes every book.
Okay. My characters come from flowers. Since all the girls are named after flowers, so that was kind of an easy one. I could just go, okay, yeah, let me pick a bunch of flowers. So that was pretty simple. And the other ones, I kind of do the same thing. I go to I go to British names. I ask my husband what's a good British name. I try to think like something that would have been a name back then, but not too hard to pronounce, because one of the things that annoys me when I'm reading, if I don't know how to pronounce the name, of the character, and I sort of stumble over it as I go. So I try to find names that are a little bit easier to sort of pick up. Okay, so we're going to go the quick fire, guys, because we're going to wrap up here really quick. So I'm going to ask each one of you in turn. You're just going to answer with one quick way. So we're going to go to Meg. Okay, quick fire. Your favorite hobby?
Reading.
Favorite thing?
My sneakers.
Favorite movie?
Big Fish.
What you're reading now?
True and Now by Greg Neary.
Okay, and where you write?
Oh, right here. My study.
That's great. Okay, so Jessica?
Ready?
Okay, so here we go. Ready? Your favorite hobby?
Reading.
Okay. Favorite thing?
My cat. Does it count as a thing?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Favorite movie?
Oh, it's so problematic, but Gone with the Wind.
Okay. What you're reading now?
I just finished Rita Williams Garcia's One Crazy Summer.
Okay. Where you write?
Right here.
Okay. That's so easy. Okay. Cat. Okay. So, your favorite hobby?
Going to see movies in indie theaters.
Nice. All right. Favorite thing?
My kids.
Favorite movie? Yeah.
Mary Poppins.
Ah. What you're reading now?
The Death and Life of Zebulon Finch by Daniel Kraus.
Okay. Where you write?
Here in my office or at coffee shops.
Okay. All right. So for me is where am I? There I am. Okay. So my favorite hobby is raising goats and embroidery. So take two. My favorite thing is my clawfoot bathtub. My favorite movie is Breakfast at Tiffany's. I'm reading Into the Dim, which is really fabulous. Her name has escaped me. Anybody remember her name?
Janet Taylor.
Thank you, Janet Taylor. Okay, sorry, Janet. Where I write here in the library, and I also have a study. I have a studio outside, but I don't heat it in the winter, so I work in here. So yeah, that's it. Okay, so everybody, thanks so much. We're going to announce our winners, which is, okay, so for the retweets, find my notes. The retweet winner is Jennifer Jazwiski. Sorry, Jennifer, I just completely messed up your name, but Jennifer. And the question was Amy Lim with that fabulous question about the badass women in history who need more love. So we will be sending out, if you can please email me your address at shazwriter, which is SHAZ writer @me.com. I will make sure we will get your address and you'll get your signed books from all four of us. We also have some door prizes to give away. And everybody who's viewing right now, if you could also email me your addresses, and then you will get a swag pack as well. And then everybody who answered a question will also get swag packs too. So I think that's about it. Does everybody want to tell me where you are appearing next? So let me start with Kat here. What are you going to be doing for your book release, and where will you be appearing?
I'll be at Howell's Books at Cedar Hills Crossing in Beaverton, Oregon, this upcoming Thursday, March 10th at 7 o'clock p.m.
Okay, great. And Jessica?
So on Tuesday, I will be at Politics and Prose in DC with a bunch of fabulous authors, including David Levithan, Andrea Kramer, who wrote one of the stories in my book, and a couple other people whose names I'm totally blanking on right now. And then Friday, I'll be at One More Page for the release party with 3 of my authors in Arlington, Virginia.
Fun. Okay, Meg.
I will be at the Tucson Book Festival this coming weekend, and then at the Virginia Festival of the Book, and the weekend after that at the West Florida Reading Festival in Fort Myers.
Nice. And I will be doing a book release and signing at the Barnes & Noble in Valparaiso, Indiana. Oh, and here come all my dogs. And I will also be in New York on, Jessica, when is that? What's the date? The 20th? For the YA Book Festival. But you can go to everybody's websites, and all of our appearances will be there. You can also get a hold of all of us on our website. And I think that's about it. That's about the wrap-up. And we want to thank everybody for showing up. And this is going to be also on YouTube. So if you know somebody who wanted to see the talk and they didn't get a chance, you can go to YouTube and look it up under Badass History, Young Adult Historical Fiction Chat. And you can also get to us online on Twitter and on our website. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
Bye.